Coming to another installment of the financial workshops. I'm Rob Burrows, one of the department chairs in the entertainment business program, and I'm very glad that you're all here this evening. We're going to be talking about one of the things. It's kind of like insurance. You know you need it, you don't talk about it, but it's something that can be very, very helpful for you, particularly in the financial area. Now, the three series or the three seminars that we're doing as part of this workshop has started in May with getting out of debt. We're going to be talking about personal budgeting today, and in June, the third segment is going to be we're going to be talking about how to get started with investing. So after we go through the process today of budgeting and learning how to set some money aside and generate some savings to invest, in June you're going to figure out how to turn that into millions of dollars. So to start out with, there is going to be a copy of this online for you to download if you'd like to refer to it later. The link is the bit.ly code right there. So that's going to be available as a resource. Another very, very important resource that I'd highly recommend that you take advantage of is the Common Sense Financial Advice, Dollars and Cents blog by the dean of this whole series, Ron Cook. And that blog's at roncook.org, and he's actually got some updates for the budgeting session today, along with a lot of other resources as well. Now, we also have, I hope, online students here today. They can see us and hear us. Glad you could join us as well. We're going to have this session archived for future viewing also, and that information is going to be disseminated later once we get that all set up. Now, one of the things that I'd like to do is give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the budgeting process. We're going to walk through why to budget. We're going to talk about what a budget is all about, how to create it, how to set financial goals, and how to use those goals to work towards the end result that you want. Now, you might ask, what the heck makes me such an expert in all of this? Well, I've got a little bit of experience in the area. In addition to my time here at Full Sail, where I've been involved in teaching and doing the curriculum for a lot of the accounting and financial courses in the entertainment business section, I was also in the financial business for about 30 years, 15 of those as the chief financial officer for several public and private companies. So I've basically been through the school of hard knocks and learning how to do this process. It's not only just for businesses large and small. I've been with companies like General Electric and Lockheed Martin, and I've also done it for small owner-operated businesses as well. But the biggest qualification, I think, that lets me talk to you personally about this today is that I'm also a kitchen table budgeter. So I've been working on my own personal budgets for years as well. And I understand what it's like to go through the process of trying to figure out how to meet your monthly, daily, yearly expenses. And you guys are all dealing with some pretty heavy issues right now. One of the things that budgeting is going to help you do is the foundation and the basic plan to build a secure financial future. Now, why are finances a big deal? There have been a number of surveys of college students that show that of the top stressors while you're in school, academics doesn't show up until about the 5th or 6th place. The other top 4 are all financial related. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my tuition? How do I pay for my fees? all of those factors, all of those financial concerns take precedence over academics. Now, what that means is that you're getting all involved in trying to stay up to date on your money, and any challenges that you experience in that area are going to take away from your academic focus. Now, who's coming here on a student loan right now? Okay. Well, I can't fix the student loan disbursement process, but what we're going to be talking about this evening is going to give you a tool, a way to manage your finances so that we don't end up with the biggest problem or the biggest reason why folks drop out of school, which are financial concerns. So to start out with, why are we going to budget? Why would we want to budget? What kind of financial objectives do we have? You see some examples up here. Saving for education is a big one. Retirement, buying a car, buying a house, saving up for those unexpected events. Something happens to your health or your home. You want to be able to have some reserves to take care of those events when they occur. Now, here's an example, a simple example of what can happen with credit card debt. Let's say that you start out with a situation where you've got a balance of $10,000 on your credit card. Now, the average interest rate on credit cards these days is about 15%. So if you put together a plan where you were going to pay down $150 a month, it would take you about 12 years to pay off that $10,000. And at the end of those 12 years, you would have paid, including the interest, over $21,000. Now, look what happens if you just make a real small increase in your monthly payment to that plan, something that budgeting can help you out with. You bump it up by $50 a month. Instead of $150, you make it $200. Now, look what happens to the time frame that it takes for you to pay that off. You knock about 5.5 years off of that time, just by making that small adjustment in your monthly payment. And at the end of it, instead of paying over $21,000, you're paying a little under $16,000. So a little bit can go a long way. And this is where budgeting, the real power of budgeting, comes into play. Now, what is a budget? In its basic sense, a budget is a roadmap for you. It's a plan. It's a guideline on how you need to manage the ins and outs of your finances. And the biggest thing is, it's an essential step in helping you on the way to financial security. So a budget is a tool that you control, you manage, you create. Now, what are the other impressions about budgets? When you hear about budget, what do you think about? Straitjacket? Diet? No fun? Right? What's that? Yeah. Right? You can't have those cookies. That's what a budget is not. Because if you go into it with that perspective, then you're going to be fighting the process. It's something that you're not really bought into, you don't really see the value of it, and it's going to be difficult to stick with it. So what do? What's in a budget? The first thing that we have to take a look at is the two main components that you have to get a handle on. How much money do I have coming in, my income? and how much money's going out? My expenses. Now, with all of you these days, that expense arrow is probably a lot wider than the income arrow, right? A lot bigger. So when we talk about savings, we're not really talking about savings. We're just talking about trying to stay even each month. But this is the start. The start of a budget is to figure out what's coming in from what sources. Could be a part-time job, could be a student loan, maybe you had some investments and savings that you put together. Those are your incomes. The expenses are everything that you're spending money on. And you want to get it, you want to list those out. You want to know where everything's going. And what's left over, or what's not left over, are your savings. Now, where do we start? Just as we were saying, you want to figure out what your income is, how much you're getting each month, and it's probably a good idea to do it for that time frame. Because if you try to stretch it out over a whole year, you kind of lose track of things. So if you keep it a shorter time frame, you can watch the ins and outs a lot easier. The expenses, same thing. How can we set this up in a way that it's easy to manage? One of the biggest things that you can do is set up a worksheet. What's my income? Well, let's assume that you graduated and you're working. Now, what's your guess at the salary that you're going to be getting on your first job when you graduate? What do you think? 40,000? Do I hear 100? 150? 40,000 is not too bad. The example that I got up here was assuming about 48. You know, it could be more, it could be less, depending on the opportunities that you have. So that's where you want to start. What's my salary going to be? Now, that's not necessarily what your income is, though, right? Because what's the first thing that gets taken right off the top? Taxes. You have Social Security, you have income taxes, and if you're like me and you want to hedge your bets a little bit on your health, you want some health insurance. So what your income really is your take-home pay. The $3,200 or so that you're going to have left over after everybody else has skimmed their little bit off the top. So that's where you start. So $3,200 for your income. Now let's look at the expenses. Rent. Get a roof over our heads. Utilities. When we graduate, the first thing we're going to do is go buy that sports car, right? Yep. I did it. Big mistake. But I denied myself long enough. I've been staring at that cookie jar for 4 years. I said, it's about time to do something. Food. Got to do that occasionally. But what's going to be one of the biggest and hardest things to control? Entertainment. Exactly right. You want to go out to restaurants, you want to go to clubs, you want to go to movies, you want to go have fun. So we put some numbers together on that, and we end up with the total for expenses, about $3,230. Now, those of you that are math wizards, what can you tell right away? We got a little problem, don't we? We're not exactly saving money. We're going into debt a little bit more each month. And this isn't too unusual for a lot of people. But this process lets us identify it and figure out where the holes in the bucket are. Next thing we want to do is, what do we do now? How do we address this? Now, this is a really important and key step, because getting into a budget or doing a budget or taking on a diet without a goal in mind, one that you're willing to work for, one that you're willing to stick to, isn't going to work. The goal that you set for yourself is going to be the real motivator and driver for you throughout this process. What do I need this money for? Why do I want to make this budget? And why do I want to stick to it? So what's a goal look like? How do we do it? Well, the first step is we've got to identify it. What is it that we want to achieve? What goals do we want to get to? How much money are we going to need? When are we going to need it? How are we going to get there? What's our current situation? What did our budget tell us? How far out of balance are we? Do we save a little money each week or each month, or are we spending more than we get? And then the last one, how can we improve our situation? Now, let's start with the goals. What does a goal look like? If you were to set a goal for yourself, how would you define it? How would you specify it? How would you describe it? What's that? Series of steps. What's a goal that you might have? What's a financial goal that you might have right now that you'd want to achieve? Yeah. So there's an amount, right? There's an amount of money that I need. What else has to be part of that goal to make it tangible and something that you can really work towards? Exactly right. The amount that you want and the time period that you want it in. There's one more very, very important element to specifying or setting a goal. What is it? And this is probably the most critical part.
What are you going to do with the money?
Is that what you were going to say, too? What you want to do with the money, right? That's exactly right. What are you going to use it for? Because it's that end result that's going to keep you motivated. What's my reward going to be when I go through this whole process and I end up saving that money with my budget? This is what a goal looks like. I want to buy a new car. So how much money am I going to need? We'll pick about $15,000. I want it about 2 years from now. I'm going to wait that long to save it up. And it's going to be the nicest new car you've ever seen. What's another goal? Pay off some debt. Those of you that are borrowing some money to go through school right now are going to be looking at this one pretty seriously when you finish up. That's going to be a big, big objective. So when you're setting a goal, you want to define what you want the money for, how much you need, and when you need it. So now you've got two of the components in managing a budget. The third one is analyzing your situation. You listed out your income and your expenses, and you came up with this result right here. Boy, I want to be able to carve out that extra $50 a month to pay towards my credit card so that I can have it paid off 5 years sooner than I would otherwise. So when you analyze your situation, this is where you sit down and you say, okay, I know what my goal is. I have to start making some hard decisions. How do you improve your situation? Where are you going to cut back? One of the ways to approach this is this. There are really two main categories of expenses. There are the wants, and there are the needs. Which one of those categories do you absolutely have to spend money on? The needs, right? But which ones do we really spend the money on? The wants. That's right. Why? Because those are the ones that give us enjoyment. They give us pleasure. They're rewards. We've been working hard all week. I deserve to go out to that restaurant or go to that club. or to see that movie. The wants are the expenses that are going to blow the biggest hole in your budget. Because when you're talking about needs, you're going to negotiate really hard with that landlord over the rent. You're going to go, you want to charge me how much a month? I can go down the street and get it for $100 less. Food, especially if you're cooking it yourself, if you're like me, I'm not a really good cook, so I'm not going to go out and buy any expensive stuff because I'll ruin it anyway. But when it comes to the wants, the entertainment, the clothes, the travel, those kind of things, those are the things that are the hardest to control when it comes to managing a budget. So start out with those. Identify what those are. And the first thing you can do with wants is that you have the luxury to just eliminate them entirely because they're discretionary. You don't really need them. You really want them, but you don't really need them to live. That's the first bucket that you're going to look at to cut your expenses in. Then look at your needs. What am I spending on rent, utilities, car payments, insurance, all those types of things? And figure out how much that is. Then figure out ways to cut back on it. When you're looking at the wants, for example, how much are you willing to give up? How serious are you about this goal? Do you really mean it? Because if you do, then the importance of the wants kind of diminishes quite a bit. Because your goal is now taking some precedence, is now becoming more important to you than the occasional entertainment or going out to a restaurant or something like that. So the wants are a good target. You can still cut back on the needs, right? I can tell you with me, the last thing I ever wanted to do after I graduated was have another roommate. Who's living with a roommate these days? Yeah. Are you going to want to keep up that lifestyle forever? Definitely not. But after you graduate, maybe that's a smart thing to do for a while when it comes to cutting back on your rent expense and utilities, is to share it. What kind of food do you buy? What kind of clothes do you buy? Where do you shop? How much do you need? You want to take a look at all of that. So once you've listed it out, you now have some very specific things in front of you to work with. Now the next step, it isn't all about cutting expenses. Maybe you can make some more money. That's possible. Maybe there's an opportunity for overtime with your employer. Maybe there's a part-time job that you can do on the side to generate some more income. Maybe you can get a higher paying job, better salary. I know it's tough these days to consider that, but there have been times where that's been a very real opportunity for people, and hopefully it will be in the future. And this last one is one that I would urge you to consider. How many of you want to go to California or to New York after you graduate to work? Okay, what do you want to do up there? What's that?
Some PR work.
Okay. California or New York?
California.
California? LA probably, right?
No.
No?
Not north.
North? Okay. Just as expensive? And somebody back there? Who else? LA too. Let's think about this when it comes to taxes and why you'll want to keep this in mind when you're budgeting. Let's say that you wanted to go work PR in New York and you wanted to work in Manhattan. But we all know nobody can afford to live in Manhattan, So you have to live somewhere else. Let's say that you find a place in Hoboken, just across the river, short trip through the tunnel. And so now you're working in New York City, you're living in New Jersey. Now, how many of you know this? Does New York City have an income tax? Yes, they do. Does New York State have an income tax? Yes, they do. Does the state of New Jersey have an income tax? Yes, they do. And of course, we can't forget Washington. So if you decide to get a job someplace like that, you're going to be staring 4 income tax bills in the face. Now, if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But that's the price you're going to pay for it. California, the state of California has an income tax. Some cities do or don't, depending on their circumstances. So that's a very real factor that you'll be dealing with, are the taxes that you'll be paying. Now, if you stayed here in Florida, how many income taxes would you be paying? 1. Just 1 to DC. Now, how much, imagine how much that would help. Yep, you have a question? Okay. So imagine how much that would save you if you picked the area that you were going to live in. Now you know why businesses move locations in our state sometimes, because they look at the same issues. Now, said Rob, you just told me that the way to win at the racetrack, yeah.
I have a question. You still have an idea how much is that income tax in New York City?
Well, depending on your income level, it could be anywhere between 1% to 3%. The state of New York, the max marginal rate's about 8%. State of New Jersey is about the same area. Now, the good news is that they'll let you, and the federal government does this as well, they let you deduct your state and city taxes when you're calculating the bills for these others, but that only gives you small savings. So it adds up. It adds up quite a bit. But that's exactly, when you're looking for a job, that's exactly one of the things that you want to check into. How much is going to be skimmed off of my paycheck for items like that? Now, any other questions? Now, as I was starting to say, you know, we got here, and basically what I told you is that the way to win at the racetrack is to bet on the winning horse, right? Budget, save money, and you'll be fine. The process is simple, isn't it? You have 2 questions. Do I need it? Right? Can I earn more to pay for it? And there are 2 variables. You've got how much am I going to buy of whatever it is that I want, and what's it going to cost me? The process, you know, all of these concepts are really pretty simple, aren't they? Pretty straightforward. I mean, you all are smart folks. You know this stuff. But why is it so darn hard? Why doesn't anybody do it? What's the biggest reason that budgets fail? What do you think? Yeah. Temptation. Were you in here? Were you reading the slides earlier? You're exactly right. People don't stick to it. And why is that? Well, for some of the reasons that we talked about earlier. Budgets are like diets. We look at them like self-denial. You're a straitjacket. Oh, we can't do what we want. We can't have those cookies. We can't go out. We can't buy that car. We can't buy or rent that apartment. It's all no, 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 no. That's no fun. So why stick with something that's not fun? Well, the way to overcome it is this. Create a goal for yourself that's worth pursuing. Just like we saw that simple example with the credit card. You know, with just a minor increase in your monthly payment, 150 to 200 bucks a month, you could get 5 years of debt off your back just by making a small adjustment. Is that worth it? Or am I okay lugging that big old bag of debt with me for the rest of my life? What's a worthwhile goal for you? You want to buy a car? Do you want to go on a trip? You want to buy a house? What is it that's going to get you motivated to exercise the discipline and apply the persistence to stay with it? That's the first one. What's my goal? The second one, create that budget. List out your expenses. List out your income. What's coming in, what's going out. In detail, as much as you can. Now here's something else that's really important when it comes to taking on something that might be a little unpleasant. Start small. I used to play basketball years ago in high school, shortly after Abner Doubleday invented the game. And one of the things my coach told me was, he said, when you go out to practice, don't try hitting shots from downtown from 30 feet out. Go in and do a layup first. Prove to yourself that the ball really can go through the hoop. Make it easy. So with budgets, do the same thing. Don't go after some big, enormous goal to start out with. Start small. Start with something small and manageable. Start with something that only requires you to do $1 a day. Set aside $1 a day. Prove to yourself that you can do it. Prove to yourself that you won't miss it. And build that confidence. Now, this is another important issue, and this goes with the $1 a day part of it. Who does all your money go to in expenses? Who does your rent go to? You? No. Who does your grocery payments go to? You? Who does your car payment go to? Who does your utility payment go to? Are any of those people you? No. Exactly. Exactly. None of those people receiving your money are you. That sounds kind of backwards, doesn't it? Who are you working for? Are you working for yourself? Or are you working for all these of you? I can tell you, they're awfully darn happy that you're out there working. Especially if you keep paying on time. But the most important person that you should be paying is yourself. Pay yourself first. Set aside the money that you need for yourself first. Now, who's had a job before? Or who's working now? Great. Okay. How does your employer send you your money? Does he give you a check at the end of the week or the end of the month, or do you get it?
You get a debit card that they're connected with.
You get a debit card? Great. Anybody ever used anything called direct deposit? You all seen that, right? Did you know that you can tell your employer to take a certain portion of your check each pay period when he disperses it and tell him, you know what, I want $50 of my paycheck to go into this savings account over here. I don't want it to come to my checking account, because if it lands in my checking account, what's going to happen to it? It's going to get spent. You put it over in this far off account that you seldom look at called savings. You'll never miss it. That is an easy way to pay yourself first. Direct deposit, it doesn't all have to go in your checking account. It can go in, you can give them 2 accounts to put your money into. Some savings, some checking. So pay yourself first. Pay with cash. Now, I know that's archaic, Bitcoin's the big thing now. Pay with cash, or if you use credit cards, make sure that you pay off your entire card balance each month. It's kind of like cash. But what you're doing is, by doing that, you're exercising the discipline to stay within your budget. So use that credit card, but remember that when that bill comes at the end of the month, you're paying it all off. It's going to zero. You're not going to carry anything over. You're not going to let it balloon to $10,000 and then spend the next 12 years paying it off. Pay it off. Use cash. Now, track your progress. What did we say a budget was all about? It's a goal. It's a roadmap. There's an old saying, if you don't have a map, any road will get you there. The budget is the map that gives you the most direct and efficient way to get to your goals. And to make sure you're staying on it, you want to track it. You want to see how you're doing. Remember one of the goals, I want to save $15,000 in 2 years to buy a new car? That's about, what, $700 a month, somewhere in that neck of the woods. Where are you going to see that money adding up? In that savings account that you set up, or that brokerage account that you set up. Just store it away so it'll be there when you need it. Track your progress. Make this whole budgeting process and budget control process, I know it's not going to be fun, but make it something that you get some reward out of, where you can see yourself getting nearer to your goal. And we'll talk about how you can do that in a minute. You started out with $1 a day. Can you do 2? Can you do $1.50? One of my favorite, I'm not picking on New York because I don't like them, I love them. But New York's got a lot of great examples here. How much does a pack of cigarettes cost in New York these days? $13, right? Those are the cheap ones. You can go $15, $20 depending on where you're buying them. I know because my son's a chain smoker and he used to live up there. He came down here, he thought he got a raise. A pack of cigarettes, let's call it $13. Right? Yeah. Challenge yourself. Can I do with 1 pack a month less? And put that money aside. Figure out ways to bump up that $1 a day. Get it to 2, then 3. Make that an objective for you. Make that a motivation. This one is my favorite. Just like a diet, what do all successful diets tell you to do? Cheat occasionally, right? Sure. Reward yourself occasionally. Say after 6 months, you hit your 6-month goal. Go out and reward yourself. Of course, don't blow the whole 6 months. Set yourself back to time to the beginning. But reward yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you keep it under control. Let the budget be a regular part of your life, not this constraining straitjacket that doesn't let you have fun or enjoy yourself. And then the last one, and this is probably the most important one of all, tell your family and friends what you're doing. Why do you think that's helpful?
They help you?
They'll help, exactly right. Is that what you're going to say? Yeah, because, just like an exercise plan or a budget or a diet, one of the biggest factors of success is having a budget. To ham and egg it. Oh, you're feeling down, you don't feel like going out and exercising. But they're there for you, they'll drag you out, you'll go do it, and you'll feel better when you do. Tell your friends and family. Because what will happen is that they will support you in that process. They'll envy the heck out of you for sticking to it, because sticking to a budget is hard. And they see you succeeding, they see you demonstrating what you can do, they'll support you, yeah.
It would give you more of an incentive to do it, to finish it, because you don't tell them and you don't stick to it. You're just lying to yourself, or you're telling your family and friends you're going to do something and then you don't do it. It makes them kind of look at you like, oh, he doesn't stick to his goals.
That's perfect. You're exactly right. You're kind of setting yourself up, right? You know, you've got something vested in succeeding and following through on this. You told them what you were going to do, and you want to show them that you can. That's perfect. That's a great point. Friends and family, they can also buck you up when you're starting to get a little down. They can help you out. So make it a group thing. Because if you're trying to do this all by yourself, it gets tough. It's all about you. During the down times, you only have yourself to pick back up. But when you got friends and family helping you out, you got a good support network. This right here is the key to making a budget work. Because all the rest of it is record keeping and arithmetic. It really is. It really is that simple. It's not complicated, but it's hard. Because making a budget successful is all up here. What's between your ears. It's the dedication, it's the commitment, it's the persistence to stick with it. This really is a motivational exercise like no other. Because you have to control every aspect of your life to make the budget successful. So, how do we get there? The components are easy. You want to start out with your income and expenses. You want to put a worksheet together. You know where you are. You got a handle on the details. You want to set your goal. That's probably one of the most critical steps in this whole process. What's my goal? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose for going through this whole process? Next step, where am I? Can I afford the cat or not? Most cases, the answer is no. If we're sitting down doing a budget, we know there's a problem. How do we fix it? How do we make things better? Again, that process is easy. How much am I spending? What's it on? How can I cut back? How can I make more money? And the last step, to make it successful, stick with it. And that's what's going to get you to your goal. And that's the key to this whole process, is that motivational aspect of this, is creating that incentive to let you stick with the process. Any other questions? You all had some good ones. Yeah.
Do you know any way, like, you said make a worksheet of your income and everything like that? How do you usually set that up, or how would you go about that?
I think that's a great question. I'm going to skip ahead for a second. In the download for the presentation, I've included a whole bunch of resources for you guys. One of the things is a budget worksheet that's in a Google Doc format for you. So that's something that you can download. But to answer your question, what you want to do is just like you saw that list of categories, what's my income, salary, taxes, and then I listed out rent, utilities, cable, phone. That's the starting point. what are the categories or the items that I'm spending my money on, and where am I getting it from? So you start out with that. And then what you do is that you create, say 12 columns, go out a year, where you have a column for each month. What do I expect my income to be in January? Well, I'm going to be working at the same old job. They're paying me this much, so that's pretty easy. X. What's my rent going to be in January? What are my utilities going to be like? How much food am I eating? So what you'll do is you can go back and look at your checkbook, your online bank statement, your credit card statement, any source where you have a history of the money that you spent to get an idea on what your track record is. And that's your starting point. Where am I making my money? What am I spending it on? And what's my average been for the last 3 months? And that kind of gives you a baseline to start from. And then what you do is, you then look at, okay, how do I make this better? What can I cut back on? Where or how can I make more money? And then in month 2, 3, 4, out to month 12, you start making some projections, some estimates. Okay, I'm going to cut back on my restaurant bills by $25 a month. I'm going to cut back on my utilities. I don't need the landline and my cell phone. I'll just go with my cell phone. I'll bite the bullet and I'll go with that roommate. I'll be really choosy about them, but that might help. So once you set your baseline, you can then start looking at the particular items and figuring out, how do I make this better? How do I create more of a surplus for myself at the end, where I have some money to save, invest, or buy something that I wanted to use? Now, tracking it, following all your expenses and everything, back in the old days, used to be a lot of work. But you guys have some great tools available to you now. For example, who has, none of you have an iPhone, right? Mobile apps. There are mobile apps that are set up to help people track their expenses, manage a budget, you can manage your bank account online, obviously. A couple that are pretty decent here. Power Wallet's a good one. You can load in a budget and you can automatically import information from your credit cards and bank statement to give you an update on what's going on, so you can generate a running financial statement for yourselves. That's one of the ways that you can keep track of things and also kind of motivate yourself as well. You know, gee, do I have any room left this month to go out to the restaurant to buy those clothes? You go to Power Wallet. Mint has some really good ones. They're free. And then you can get into some pay ones if you want to. iReconcile is another good one. Laptop applications, they can actually work together. Mint does, for example. Quicken is a real popular, well-known one. CheckMe, that used to be called Page Ones. Similar kind of facility, similar kind of features. You can do that all on your own. Yeah.
I have a question from online.
Yeah.
One of the students would like to know, what if you have multiple goals? Some of my goals are, of course, to get out of debt and save money, but how do I choose which to focus on first?
It's a great question. Let me open that up to the audience. What would you recommend? How do you prioritize your goals? Based on time? Okay. Which one's a need? Good ones? Okay. Yeah.
Factor in what type of debt you have and like the interest rate as well. Like what's gonna keep you in debt longer? Like are you gonna be able to save more? Like what's gonna keep you in there longer?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Let's kind of put all of these together. the way that I would prioritize goals would be, number one, what's the need, right? Is it a health-related thing? Is it a home-related thing? What do I need when it comes to food, clothing, shelter? Does my goal fit in one of those categories? Next, what's going to give me, the next choice is what's going to give me the most financial flexibility if I'm able to work on this goal? And the big one in that category is usually what? Paying off debt. Paying off debt has some very, very big rewards to it. That example that I showed you in the beginning, the $10,000, 15% interest, you focus on paying down debt, that opens up a whole world of opportunities for you. So start out with your basic needs. Does my goal fit into that? If it doesn't, is it paying off debt? That would be number two. And then number three, you start getting more into the, gee, I need a new car, I'd like to go on a trip, those kind of things. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you said that, well, it gets to a point like when you're in school that, I mean, we're all thinking what we're gonna do with our money, what we have the money, you know, what are we gonna invest in. I would like to know, what was your first investment? Was it successful or not successful? And what do you recommend just to us when we get to that point?
Well, I can tell you what my first investment was, and I was extremely lucky with it too, because the company that I got my first job with out of college was General Electric. And GE had an unbelievable benefits program. One of the benefits that they had is that they had an employee stock purchase plan. And what they allowed you to do is buy shares of stock, of General Electric stock, at a discount to market. So if the price of GE stock that day was $20, you could buy it for $17. So that was my very first investment. Now, thank God it wasn't Enron that I was working for, right? But what you can do is, what you want to do when you're going to invest and you're just starting out, safety is a very big issue. You want to be very careful where you're going to put your money. So preservation of your principal is going to be the biggest factor. So if you're going to go into stocks, which are a good choice, you want to go with strong, well-established companies. And that's a great question, because next month around this time, that's one of the topics that John Nash is going to talk about in starting investing. Yeah.
What do you think about investing, but based on algorithms, just for algorithms?
Well, I don't want to bore everybody, but 15 years ago, there was a hedge fund called Long-Term Capital, right? Long-Term Management Capital, I think they were called. They had, what was it, John, 2 Nobel Prize winners? They had 2 Nobel Prize winners on their staff that developed these algorithms to manage and invest in securities.
How long ago?
15 years ago, 1998. They were long-term capital management, LTCM, okay? Long-term capital management was the Lehman Brothers of 1998. They were algorithm traders. They had come up with this formula that they thought was foolproof. So ever since, so I had the good, 1998 was a little too early for me to really be big in investing, so I didn't have a lot of risk at that point in time. But it was a lesson that they taught me real early. If 2 Nobel Prize winners couldn't do it, I sure as heck couldn't. So I would be very, very careful about stuff like that. Very careful. You hear about high frequency trading. You hear about, the quants on Wall Street that have these hedging formulas that are set up and everything. Makes me very nervous. For an individual, I would really caution you against it. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't somebody out there that's got the magic formula.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time, it ends badly. Good question, though. Anything else?
Well,
Yeah.
I can talk to you about this. Basically, I have this group from MIT that we're doing this based on algorithms, and I would like to show it to you.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. And you want to share it with any other potential investors
If you
too?
want to put money now, you'll see.
Because if you got the answer, you'll have people beating your door down, that's for sure. But it hasn't happened yet. All right. Yeah.
And how often do you recommend adjusting your budget and or even looking at it for that matter? Because some people, they like to look at things daily. Other people, big picture, they know what does it look like at the end of the year? What time frame do you recommend?
I would say, and that's a great question, and you brought up exactly the right point about this. It depends on your personality. Some people want to watch it daily, right? What did I do today? Because that's their personality. I would say at a minimum, you want to look at it each month. So every 30 days, you want to status where you are, maybe do a refresh, because things happen. Things that you didn't expect happen. Could be good, could be bad. And so what you'll do is, and this goes back to what we were saying before about the budget not being a straitjacket, the budget is a roadmap for you. It's got about 8 lanes on it. And you can weave between those lanes, but as long as you're heading in the right direction. So if you let it go for more than a month, that means that a lot of unexpected variables pile up, and you could be way over in the right-hand lane before you realize that you've got some adjustments to make. So you want to kind of keep a close tab on it. I'd say a minimum of a month. And if you like to watch it daily, that's what these mobile apps help you with. More power to you. Make it a video game. Great question. Well, the presentation can be downloaded. It's up there. At no extra charge, you'll get that resources page. And if you have any other questions that you'd like to follow up on, I'd be very happy to work on them with you. And last but not least, good luck. Thanks for being here. What's that?
Go back to the link.
Yeah.
Thank you.